Obviously, at the heart of this exhibition is my family story, and that's very close to me. And the artifacts used in this exhibition come from my family over the last 50 odd years.
Hi everyone, this is Silas from asianculturevulture.com. I'm here at Coventry at the Herbert Gallery for a very important exhibition. We're going to find out from the main curator, artist Hardish Virk, what it's all about.
So about 30 years ago, I came up with this concept of having a living museum of South Asian stories in Coventry, a building-based museum. So as you enter the living room, you go back to the 1930s. As you enter the kitchen, you go into the 1950s, and you work your way around the house, and you get to experience different generations, different lived experiences. So 13 years in the making, this exhibition is a blueprint for this living museum. So what we've created here is, essentially these room settings that allow visitors to step into these other worlds, other generations, other eras. But also, I was very keen for this exhibition, and all the work that I do challenges stereotypes, challenges the status quo, that we're not one homogenous South Asian community. We're a very diverse community of individuals, families, communities with different connections going back to different parts of the world. Our diaspora is very diverse and very vast as well. And our history goes back centuries, not decades. So all these different elements play into this exhibition. My father was an archivist. I don't think he knew he was an archivist. There was no terminology for what he was doing. So when he first arrived into the UK in the late 1960s, he had a camera. So he photographed British life, British South Asian life in Coventry and across the country as well. He went on protests. He took photographs of everyday life of South Asians living in this country, be it the migrant community or the British-born community. So that was one way of him evidencing our presence in this country. But also, he started to collect objects, artifacts, literature, which became what is now known as a Virk collection, which he deposited at the Coventry Archives 20 years ago. But his role informally was an archivist, and that's one of the conversations I have with the work that I do as well, that we value our personal stories through artifacts and personal archives, that we put value very much in our own stories, our community stories, our social stories, as you would find in institutions like museums or the National Trust, that our stories are as valuable, as nuanced as you would find anywhere else in the mainstream. It could have been that my father's family, his sisters were already living in this country, so he came over to join the family. He went to university in India. I suspect that when he came to this country, he thought that he could continue an academic life, but with most South Asians that migrated from Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, East Africa, they may have come with certain ambitions, but when they arrived here, they went into manual labor. My father went into the Ford Motor Company to build cars. So I suspect that there was an element of family and work. Obviously, at the heart of this exhibition is my family story, and that's very close to me. And the objects, the artifacts used in this exhibition come from our family over the last 50 odd years. But I've been working on this project for the last 5 years. Stories That Made Us, the umbrella project under which this exhibition sits. So I've already gone through the process of being very close to the subject matter, to detach myself away from the family narrative or the emotions of the family narrative, and to start approaching it on a more of a detached level. So therefore, when I work on the storytelling of this exhibition, I'm treating it as a director, as a writer, as a curator, as an archivist. I don't see myself as Hardish Virk, as the Hardish Virk in the story of the exhibition. I see myself as the Hardish Virk, the archivist, the co-creator, the person who conceived this idea. I've already had 2 exhibitions that I've exhibited in Coventry at St Mary's Guildhall originally. This project was set up with the Coventry Art Space, a visual arts provision in the city that supports visual artists or artists across the board to find space. They invited me into a space to bring my archive, to work my way through it, to start cataloging it, to start looking at different stories in my archive. Then I went on to commissioning artists to respond to the archive, find stories in the archive. And I've been on a 5-year journey. So when I arrived at Stories That Made Us Roots, Resilience, Representation, I already knew exactly what I wanted, but it was really important to find the right people to work with. That is essential, because what Salish is our experience today, I can't build this. I can't do the technical aspects. I have to work with some very highly skilled people, like filmmakers. Manjinder Virk produced the films for the living room and the bedroom. I worked with Pavan Kaur, who directed the audio and the radio station. I worked with Dominic Bubb, who co-created the exhibition. Shanice Martin, who worked on the archives. Jack, who worked on the technical aspects. Builders and technicians and graphic designers to pull this exhibition together. A fantastic team of people. I also have to stress that people and organizations have to believe in your vision. And what I see a lack of around the country is lack of our stories told in institutions. If they're told, they're usually told through an anglicized lens. And what I'm trying to say is we need to take agency and own our own stories and tell the stories as how they should be told, with integrity through lived experiences. So therefore, I had full agency and sign off on every part of this exhibition. The Herbert Art Gallery Museum fully came on board to support my vision. The response has been phenomenal. So this exhibition has been on since November 2025. It's on till the 25th of May. And within this period so far, we've had visitors from New Zealand, Canada, India, Southall, Leicester, Derby, Scotland, Wales, from across the board. We're collecting people's stories and reflections in the final room of the exhibition called the Reflection Space. It extends the storytelling into the public domain. So we've had, because what's been really important to me is that visitors find their own story in the exhibition. Yes, I'm telling my family story as a heartbeat to the exhibition, which is framed within a timeline, historical timeline. The historical timeline continues into the reflection space. That's where we invite the visitors to share their own reflections, their lived experiences, their memories. And they've been really powerful because people from all different ethnicities, lived experiences have shared memories of growing up in Britain in the 1980s, that their grandparents lived in the similar living rooms in the 1970s, similar experiences of racism, similar experience of migration, identity, belonging. All these different narratives and stories have come up in the reflection space. Some of them are powerfully emotional. People have said, thank you for reminding me, for me to pause and reflect upon my own life, or that I found my mother's story, my grandmother's story in the radio station through your mum's story, my mother Jasvir Khan. I think her room setting is very distinct. If it's a radio station, and my mother Jasvir Khan, she was a radio presenter, a broadcaster, a poet, and a writer of short stories, all in Punjabi. She started writing in the 1980s. She started to broadcast on radio. It's from the early 1990s. And she spoke very much about the experiences of South Asian women in this country. She spoke very openly about domestic violence, femicide, child abuse, stories that were frowned upon within our community and weren't fully embraced within the wider society. But she continued. She found her voice in on radio, where she could reach a far greater audience. Through my company, Multi Arts Nation, we produced CDs so she can reach a wider audience. So she spoke at festivals, at conferences, and at a time in the 1980s and 1990s when these conversations were very hidden, are now more openly, not widely, but more openly spoken about. It's really important for us to recognize women like my mother from the 1970s and 1980s, who not only spoke about these issues, but spoke about them in her own language, which is really important because there's a lot of South Asian female writers who write in English today, which is great. But what we need to do is go back and look at the timeline of other female writers who wrote in this country, but they chose to write in their own language, in this case Punjabi, and to recognize them and celebrate them, because they are the foundations on which a lot of the newer writers are able to write. And some of the reflections in the reflection space have responded to that. This exhibition comes to an end in May because the way in which the Herbert Art Gallery is designed, they have new exhibitions coming in every 6 to 7 months. But the Living Museum is one objective, but that's a multi-million-pound project. So that takes time to pull something like that together. We have been thinking about touring this exhibition. We can't tour it as it is. It's not like theatre where you can just pull down the walls and then re-erect them somewhere else, because this was an empty box. We've literally built rooms like you would build in a house to make this exhibition come to life. We are now reconsidering like a flat pack version of this exhibition. So you literally do have it in the back of a van and you take it to another city or a town, not only in the UK, but across the world. And we unpack it like IKEA flat pack. You unpack it and allow people to walk through this experience. That means we have to go back to the drawing board. But one thing I would say is I would work with the same team again, because they've been fantastic. Sometimes when you find the right people, you have to work with the right people again. But I'm always keen to work with communities wherever we go, because the exhibition doesn't stand alone. We've got a lot of other activities taking place around this exhibition, learning and participation, tours, working with universities and schools, families, ambassador schemes, working with the archives. So there's a lot of the community engagement work that takes place alongside the exhibition. So we would tour the exhibition into communities, but also do a lot of wraparound activities. Health and well-being is a really important one, looking at memory, looking at dementia, Alzheimer's, looking at isolation, loneliness, depression. So all these elements form the legacy of this piece of work. And also finally to, acknowledge the National Heritage Lottery Fund, because they have funded every phase of Stories That Made Us, because they believe in this work.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sailesh, and thank you, Asian Culture Vulture.